Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My name is Aldo Mazza, percussionist, drummer, and artistic director of Cosa Music, inviting you to join in conversation with friends, artists, professionals, and experts in our music world. And remember to subscribe so you may receive notices of new and upcoming episodes. Today I have the great, and I mean great pleasure of having finally, and I mean finally, Luis Conte on the show. He's a very busy guy, and I thank you so much, Luis Conte, to join us on my podcast, Shaping Your Journey.
Yeah, we finally hooked it up.
Yay! I know you're busy with all kinds of recording and TV stuff. So anyway, I wanted to ask you the first thing before we go on to the subject of shaping your journey and the decisions we make in life to take us where we end up, doors that open for us, people to open doors, that kind of thing. Just tell us a little bit about where it started for you. Like, what was that first spark, this first seed? I know you're from Santiago, Cuba. So What was the beginning of that journey?
Well, I mean, I didn't realize I was going to be a musician or play till very, very late. But the first things I saw was the conga de la placita in Santiago de Cuba. And my aunts would write the theme songs for the every ensemble has a theme song for every year. And they were the composers. They were teachers, but they were composers. So ever since I can remember, I mean, it's like as long as I've been breathing, it's like music was around and it was just life for me. So I don't really have in the early years of my life in Cuba, it was just what you do, People would come, as a matter of fact, Compay Segundo and these guys were friends of my dad's, They're all from Santiago. Ibrahim Ferrer, my dad's best friend was Pacho Alonso, who was a famous singer in Cuba. They're all from Santiago. My dad was a doctor, he was their family doctor, etc. And they would come to my house and sing when my mom and dad had their anniversary parties, every party. Stuff was going on all the time. My grandmother, from my mother's side, who lived in Havana, because my mom was from La Habana, would come and visit and stay with us for about 3 months. And every time she came, she brought me an instrument. She says, this kid likes to play. Because I used to just bang on stuff when the radio was on and all that. But when my enlightenment happened, I was already 18 years old, man.
Wow.
And I'm in California. Because when I left at 15, which is a whole other story, where the people I stayed with were like relatives of my dad. It was completely different, the life because I lived around music in my house at home in Cuba. The radio was always on. My dad would talk about hey, check out he was a doctor, man, but he'd go check out the bass line on that song. It's like changing, man. That was the kind of, and then I went to another environment that was non-musical, and my parents were in Cuba, and it was just strange at first. So when I was 18 and I left that place and I was on my own and I was in control again, and music came back in like that. And I was taking some music classes at night because I didn't have a job. I had a little job, I wasn't playing. And at Los Angeles City College, and I'm walking towards the class and I hear, and I went, it was like, I'm talking 1970, okay? It's not like it is now. There's a lot of more percussion in the world, and people see it. In the United States, I hadn't seen a conga drum. I hadn't seen una conga since I left, or bongo or anything. And I heard that, and it was like, what is that? Forget the class. It was at the student union, and it was a meeting of the Afro-American Student Association. All the everybody was black there, and I'm like, everybody in Santiago is black. I'm like in heaven, man. It's like, oh man. And I go in there, and you know, it was just like I saw the congas, and immediately when they took a break, there was these guys that were playing, and it wasn't authentic Afro-Cuban stuff. They were just playing, but I just wanted to see where they got those drums. I went, hey, where'd you get these drums? Because well, they told me where, you know, blah, blah, blah. I got some money, I bought some congas, and that was it.
Nice story. Let me just interject something. In Santiago, of course, some people who know, but the whole conga, the conga comparsa, the comparsa, and
Yeah.
you know, I often tell people this is very different from what most people talk about Cuban music, because this is more related to the samba, the scolas, people playing all this music, like 300 people playing. It's a whole different world. And of course, we're not going to spend an hour and a half talking about that, but just to clarify, 'cause that's what it is. A lot of these people playing all these parts, drums slung around their necks, and they're going down and they have the festival in August, right? Like 40 degrees.
Well, back in the day when I was there, it used to be in July.
Okay.
You know,
same thing. Hot.
Carnaval in Santiago, but it's a neighborhood thing. You know, they're hoods. You know, you have Los Hoyos, San Agustin. We were from like La Placita, we really were from San Agustin, but my grandma and everybody and my aunts lived in La Placita, so we used to go there, which is just a few blocks. And you know, Paso Franco, El Cocoyé, you know, Componedores de Batea. There's a whole bunch of them, you know, and it's just amazing. One after the parade, and they're just playing and parading down the street, man. It's awesome. Now, do you know the difference between una conga and a comparsa? Do you know the difference?
I know the difference.
In Oriente. I don't know about Havana and all that. In Oriente, la conga has la corneta china, which is the Chinese trumpet.
Yeah.
Actually, the Chinese brought to Cuba when slavery ended, and they brought Chinese to Cuba, and to work on the cane fields and stuff. And la comparsa doesn't have corneta china, the Chinese trumpet. It has horns, trombones, and trumpets. So that's the difference. The rhythm is the same.
Right. And the trompeta china sounds like a very nasal instrument, for those who don't know. And it's really interesting. And it's that mix of Chinese and Africa, and then in Cuba and Santiago, it's amazing. And all these drums are just forever. Yeah.
It sounds like a kazoo.
Yeah.
A bad kazoo. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really hard to take for a while, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
But then I mean, you have all this in your head, and I mean, the funny thing is this, Luis, and I know you know this. In the States, Hollywood turned the whole Cuban thing with the Desi Arnaz, the whole mambo thing in the late 50s and early 60s. He was the face of Cuban music, but what most people didn't know is he was from Santiago, I think, right?
That's right.
And a lot of people associate him with the drums slung around his neck, and because that was Cuba. Well, that's Santiago. It's in Havana and Matanzas are totally different worlds. I mean, we know that because I mean, you grew up there, and I've been going for so many years. I'm almost a citizen, but I see and I've known the difference. But it's interesting to make that distinction. Most people just, you know, they generalize. It's not their fault. But once you realize and you go in a little deeper and you see those differences, it's really amazing.
It's completely different. Like you say, it's perfect that you say that. And a lot of people don't realize this because Desi, he wasn't really a conga. It was a boku. That's what we called it.
Yeah.
And boku is a straight. If you look at the video now, it's a straight drum. It doesn't have any curve in the body. It's just straight down, and it's called boku.
Just like a Brazilian.
He was a real Santiaguero, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, it's like a Brazilian samba situation where they have these drums, or what is that Brazilian drum called?
Chimbao.
Chimbao, that's right. Yeah, it's just like a chimbao, right?
Yeah, it's chimbao. It's kind of like that, except the boku has, the chimbaos that I have, their heads are a lot bigger than, larger. Their heads are not as big. and they're used with cap heads. All the chimbales are plastic heads.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so you got the drums
Light, you
and the
can carry.
rest.
It's light, you know.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
what?
No. And then when you discovered that's a great story. So you saw these like the heavens opened, the lights turned on, and you got your congas.
That was it, man. That was it. And it's like, where are people playing? Where's anybody doing this? I met a guy that was actually going to Los Angeles City College older than me, because I was like 18. And his name was John Montealegre. And he had a set of Val J's also. Like my congas were Val J's, the ones I bought. Because they're the ones that those guys were playing, you know.
Right.
And the address was right on the conga, like on the hoop. They had the address there, the phone number. Anyway, so I met him and with some other friends. You know, we're young boys, party boys. You know, we'd go, hey, let's go down to John's and hang out and party and start playing. And he told me that there are other people would play at the park here, and in Griffith Park, which is a central park, big park in LA. It's a big park on Sundays, you know. And just started meeting people. I met a guy at that place in Central Park. I met a guy who played good. A couple of dudes, because it was kind of like a thunder. I call it thunder drummers, just like thunder drumming thing. So we just like kind of went over to under another tree and started kind of playing about on our own. And I said, man, where do you get? You know, this guy had a cassette, and it was Willie Colon.
Wow.
Yeah. And I go like, hey man, but where did you get that? Because I did not hear Cuban music for 5 years, for 3 years, from 15 to I didn't at all. I said, where'd you get that? You can get that here? It sounded Cuban to me, you know, which is the root of what they call salsa. It's not salsa, it's Cuban music, but as we all know. But
yeah,
it's Cuban music to me. I'm like, these guys are from New York, man, this and that. Where did you get it? There was one store in downtown LA called Duran Music on Broadway and 3rd. Never forget it. I went down there. I bought like whatever I could afford, you know. So the first records that I actually got was Willie Colon, El Juicio, and Eddie Palmieri, Azúcar Pa' Ti.
Wow. Yeah.
Those were the first 2 records that I got. And then I got a little turntable and blah, blah, blah. And then I met a friend in school. His name, we became brothers. He recently passed away a couple of years ago. Radames Lafauri was his name. De Santiago de Cuba. He was from Santiago. We hit it off like, you know. And listen, my mom and dad, I was on my own. My mom and dad and them, they were still all in Cuba, and I was pretty much kind of like a hippie, man. I was just like, you know, hanging around and with no direction except I wanted to play music. And Radames had a car. I didn't have a car. And he says, come on, we got to go down to my mom's to get some food. Wow. I'm hungry, of course. Let's go. We go over there, and he had Descargas de Cachao.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and man. Was Cachao already in the States by then? Cachao was this bass player.
Cachao is the actual mambo king. The real mambo king is Cachao, Israel Cachao Lopez. He is the one that got the whole thing going, man. He's responsible for adding the conga drum to a típica, which is a charanga. The first conga player in Colorado was Cachao that said, hey, he was with Arcaño's band and told Arcaño, hey, we got to get one of these guys out here from the hood. We need to get this other section to this song. We're going to call it Mambo.
Okay.
And it's going to get hot. So we need a tumbadora, because right then they only had the timpani, which was, they would play danzones and guiro. That's what those típicas used to play. And they went into this second section, which is now like you hear, you know, it's kind of a cha-cha-cha kind of like, so, I mean, he's the real mambo king. So Cachao, I don't know if he was living here in the States in those days, because this is 1970, 71.
Yeah, I'm not sure what year he came here. But
He might have though. I think a lot of those guys like Celia and all those people who were famous in Cuba, they were right in the middle of everything. They realized that system was a piece of crap, and they just left, and there was no freedom. So they just like, we're out of here. So they probably, I'm sure he was here already, probably in Miami or something.
Miami, yeah, he was in Miami for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was in Miami, but then he lived in Vegas. A lot of
Oh,
people don't
that's
know that.
yeah. Well,
Which
and
I could tell you,
Walfredo worked a lot with him. Yeah.
I could tell you stories about that. Anyway,
but let me just say something. I mean, I think just a little clarification for people who still are mixed up about this, because what you said, Colon and all those guys in New York. I mean, New York was full of people coming there from Puerto Rico, and what people sometimes forget is Puerto Rico is like across the street from Cuba. So there's a lot of music that sounds the same, but I mean, what the salsa, became salsa in New York, is really a mixture of New York and Puerto Rican and Cuban, and that mix there. But Cuba, there's no salsa is not Cuban. Salsa is something that was invented in New York by all the great Puerto Rican musicians there, and then with someone like yourself who knows the real thing, you cut right down to the chase, and you know exactly, which is nice. Yeah.
yeah. So, my friend, but we mentioned Cachao because that record is a record that everybody should have and should listen to.
Say it again. What's the name of the record?
Well, they're called Cuban Jam Sessions in Miniature. Israel Lopez Cachao, Cuban Jam Sessions in Miniature. And there's a series of like 3 or 4 albums. I got 3 of them. The main one, and the most famous one, is one where there's a picture of them. I guess there's a picture of them playing, like posing, like playing. That record is the encyclopedia, is the Bible to Afro-Cuban music, which I must say, salsa, the root of salsa is Afro-Cuban music, no other. And there were a lot of Puerto Ricans, and they're all amazing, and all those bands are all incredible, and what happened is really fantastic. But the word salsa came along as a marketing name for a record company called Fania.
Yep.
Because back in the 50s, there was a theme by Roberto Faza. When the bands used to take a break, they would play a little theme. Their theme was Échale salsita, potum cum, échale salsita, potum cum, pam, 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 padam, anyway, so not to get into all that discussion, the root of all of that, early in New York, it was like Machito, Chano Pozo, all these guys, Patato Valdez, Mongo Santa Maria, Julito Collazo, Totico, all these cats were in New York, and they influenced all these other cats. And it's a beautiful thing that happened, because I love what they call salsa. I love all that music, man. I love Palmieri. I love Típica 73, Rey Barreto. I used to listen to Rey Barreto like crazy.
Yeah. Amazing.
So anyway. Yeah. But the Cachao record, when my friend Radamés takes me to this house and plays me that, it was like, like, and everyone should. Do you have that record?
I don't. I'm gonna look for. I have some of those jam sessions. There's a friend here in Montreal who sends me and Wilfredo Sr. records every once in a while that he digs up, because we've got this line going that he sends us both these records. So I don't know if I have all the 5. I think I have one of them.
Yeah, I'm sure you have it, because everybody has this record. If you're into this music.
Oh yeah. So now I have to dig it up.
Cachao, Orestes Lopez, his brother, Tata Winnie.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. Tata Winnie, Guillermo Barreto. Those are the kings. Those are the first Mohicans, man.
Yeah.
El Negro Vivar, Generoso Toho, who was the arranger for Benny Morez's band, Gustavo Tamayo. I mean, it's like amazing. Yeah. And it's a jam session record. So what happened was, I became really good friends with Cachao. He told me the whole story of like, no, this guy from RCA Records came to Havana, and we were all, he was Cachao. They were all playing all over the place. They weren't a band. They were just like all over. And contacted Cachao and says, listen, we want to do a record with some of your favorite guys, and what kind of records? Just do whatever you want. So that's why it's called Cachao Jam Sessions. They just jammed. So after all the shows finished at 2 o'clock in the morning, these records were done between 2 in the morning to 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever. They go in the
Nice.
studio and just blow. It's incredible.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Guillermo Barreto, who's a great one of Cuba's historical drummers and percussionists, he's the uncle of Piloto, Piloto's
Yeah,
uncle.
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
and the Fiesta del Tambor is dedicated to him. And by the way, as you know, he was when Buddy Rich would play Havana. One night, apparently, he fell sick. I don't know, ate too much or something. And Guillermo, who watched the show every night, jumped in. They asked him to play, and he just sat with the band and he played. I mean, the guy was amazing.
Guillermo
Guillermo
was
Barreto.
a fantastic jazz drummer.
Yeah.
He wasn't just like an Afro-Cuban timbalero. He had incredible chops, amazing. And there's a video, I don't know if somewhere I've seen it, or where it must have been in the late 60s or so, Orquesta de Música Moderna de Somavilla, which is the beginning of the rhythm section of Iraquere. Chucho and all these guys are there. And it's Enrique Pla and Guillermo Barreto. And I don't know if you've ever seen that video. And there's like a back and forth
No.
on drums. You know, they're not playing Cuban music. They're playing jazz.
Jazz, right.
It's like
Amazing. I saw the original Iraquere, but with Enrique playing. He's a left-handed player. And they're playing some of this stuff. I mean, they're doing world music, Cuban. I mean, they're really out there. And some of the jazz. And I still see Enrique all the time in Cuba. He's one of our teachers. And he's a great jazz drummer. He's always been. And I remember seeing them when I had just moved to Montreal, and it was the early 70s, and they were coming through, and I was in shock. I had never seen anything like it. It was amazing back then.
But you're saying like he's a great jazz player, and so was Guillermo Barreto, and a bunch of other cats. It's kind of a funny thing, but at least in my example, when I was in Cuba, the Cuban music that I played and what I knew how to play is because I had a bongo, I had a güiro, I had maracas, I had una conga in my house, and I would sit down and play to the radio. But besides that, I didn't really pay attention to Cuban music. Everything else was like just by osmosis. I listened to rock and roll, jazz. That's all I wanted to hear. And a lot of those guys are like that. You talk to even some young guys that have come over, they're listening to Coltrane and they're trying to listen to Miles, and they were listening or to like Deep Purple or
yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know what Changuito told me, man? One time he was like, he was in LA, he said, "Hey, bro, where's Bobby Colombi?" I went like, "Bobby Colombi? Why do you want to know Bobby Colombi?" Bobby Colombi, man. I have to meet that guy. That's one of my biggest influences. This is Changuito.
Yep.
Bobby Colombi was the drummer for Blood, Sweat, and Tears, my man.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears, yeah.
So this is it's an amazing thing. The Cuban thing just happens.
And
it's
weird.
Man.
Oh yeah. No, you're right. And what's really funny that really took me by surprise. I've been going over 20 years to Cuba and doing these trips, and I wrote the book, and so I got to know everybody really well. But at one point, Changuito says to me early on, like, dude, he says Dave Garibaldi is like one of the most amazing drummers. And then he said to me, and I said, the whole songo thing, like, how did you think of it? He says, I was listening to American funk. And
That's
Dave
right.
Garibaldi is the guy I was listening to. So I told this to David. I says, a lot of people give all the credit to Changuito, but you should be taking some of the credit too, because he's crediting you for all of this.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, it's and it's also incredible because now it's a lot easier to listen to other music. I mean, I was shocked when the first time I went back in 2009, and I was at Jazz Cafe, that club.
Jazz Cafe, wow, yes. At the Malecon, yes.
And when the band's not playing, I heard, they had Michael Jackson on, and some, Tears for Fears. And when I was in Cuba, it was against the law to listen to that shit. Or you couldn't even get those records. So it was like, or you can listen to the Beatles, man. You have to hide to like with the radio. So there's also that thing of that generation where, when you can't have something, you want it even more.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but Cuba has always been influenced by American music and jazz, and you can talk to Alfredo about that. Alfredo was in the president of the I don't know what it was called, the Cuban Jazz Society or whatever it was called. And he remember, he saw Buddy Rich and Doc Severinsen came and all these people,
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
there was a lot of interaction, and at one point there was a cruise. David Amram had told me this. He was playing with Dizzy Gillespie, and they got permission to land in Cuba, and then they organized a huge jam session between Irakere, the musicians of Irakere, and the guys on the cruise who were all these, Dizzy Gillespie and everybody. And oddly enough, on that cruise was a guy called what's his name? Who did the Buena Vista Social Club? Roy Cooter.
Right, Cooter.
Yeah, he was on that trip, and that's where that whole thing started. But everybody was listening to everybody and influencing everybody. Of course, you had the political things and all of that stuff. But musically, everybody was trading cassettes. Everybody was going here and there, and Miami being so close to Havana. I mean, the radio stations were beaming over all the time, so people were listening back then. And now, I mean, everybody listens to everything. In fact, there's a John Lennon Park on, the statue of John Lennon sitting on the bench.
Yeah, if I would have been caught with a John Lennon picture when I was in junior high school in Cuba, they would have called my parents into school and write them up and tell them that we were counter-revolutionaries. It's just a bunch of BS.
Oh,
Excuse
yeah.
me for saying that.
Oh, yeah. No, it's.
And then
I mean,
now they gotta,
yeah.
let's not even get into that.
No, of course. But I mean, you get into the politics of all of this stuff. Thank God. I mean, music, we get around everything, and that's great. Now, when you went on after that, I mean, you've played for everybody. I mean, you're known, of course, for playing with Phil Collins for a long time. I've seen you many times with Phil and Madonna. I mean, like everybody.
Yeah.
All of these things are like people just call you because they know who you are or you've played with somebody.
Well, first of all, I think the main influence of all this is the grace of God. And after that happens, and He guides you, He has a road for you. And He had a plan for me. That's just basically how I look at it, because I've never called anyone to say, hey, I'm available. Even when I've been on tour, the guys get back from tour, they go, hey, I got to let people know I'm back. So I just come back from tour. I don't call, listen, I'm back, I'm available for, it's all by the grace of God, man. So when I got those drums, I started, studying, I mean, it's like 300,000%. That's what I'm doing.
Nice.
And, and I like all kinds of music. So I love rock and roll. I love funk. I love R&B music, blues. My dad used to play like big band records at the house. He had like Grant Miller records and Tommy Dorsey and all those big bands. I listened to that all my life. He would play that on Sundays. My dad would even play opera when I was in Cuba.
Nice.
Anyway, and so I'm like really open to everything. So it's not like I want to play rumba. I want to learn what's abacua. I didn't know what that was. That stuff's like, it's more like in the western part, at least when I was down there. I could play conga. I could play guaguancó, tumbao, and all that stuff. But what's abacua, man? What's this? What's the bata drum? What is that? Okay, so I get into all of this, and things just start going. I mean, I meet some guys, and they tell me that there is a club. Oh, there was a club called Chess Pico. It was on Vermont and on Pico in Vermont. It was like a little dive, man, And they had a band who led by a Cuban guy named Chocolate, not the famous Chocolate trumpet player. This guy was a conga player. He played two congas. His wife's name was Sylvia. Chocolate and Sylvia, and he had a timbalero and a piano player. and I think a flutist. I don't remember, a trumpet. But the piano player was Joao Donato. You know who that is?
Yeah,
Joao
I know
Donato
the
is
name.
one of the great. He just passed a couple of months ago. One of the greats of Brazilian music, the great composers, legendary. Playing in a little salsa, playing Cuban music. So I went over there and said, hey, I was underage. I sneaked in, you're going to be 21. And I meet the guys and Chocolate. I said, well, bring some bongos. You got any bongos? Come on over and bring some bongo and play with us. So I just would sit in, never made any money. Then finally he hired me to play at a wedding. Hey man, I got $25. You want to play at this wedding? Yeah, sure. That was my first gig, $25.
Yeah.
So by the grace of God, the timbalero in this band, his name was Johnny Cheddar. And I'm like in LA and I go like, well, I find out there's a musicians union. I'm thinking, well, if I go to the musicians union, I can hardly get a gig there, which that's not really the case. But, I'm 18 years old, 19 years old, man. So I go, I'm going to the union. Where's the union at? Oh, Sunset on Vine. I grew up in, oh yeah, Vine and Melrose. Yeah, I know. Oh, that building. Okay. I go in there and who comes out as I'm walking in? Johnny Cheddar, the timbalero with Chocolate. And he says, hey, Luis, how you doing? Hey, listen, there was a couple of people here. They're looking for somebody to play some percussion. They say they have a record that is on RCA and it's climbing the charts, and they're going to go to New York and play. They're going to go on a little tour thing. I got their number. You want to? I said, oh, you're going to do that? I said, no, I'm not going anywhere. Here's the number. Why don't you call them? I go to a payphone. I call them up. Long story short, that band was called the Hughes Corporation.
Oh, yeah.
That was the song Rock the Boat. Rock the boat, don't rock the boat, baby. So next thing I know, I got there. I called them. I said, yeah, come down. We're playing right now. Come on down. Audition or whatever. So I got the drums. I went down there. And I just showed up with two congas. I didn't have a tambourine, cabasa, nothing, shakers, nothing. It was easy. I heard the song. It was they say that's one of the original disco songs, by the way. Anyway,
great song.
So I got the gig. So I go from playing, with Chocolate and a couple of other little bands. Pequito. There was another band called Pequito y sus Bugalús. He was from Panama. It was fantastic. And then we play at this other dive, for $20, $25. While we're doing that stuff, all of a sudden, boom, I'm with these guys. You going to New York? Oh my God. Yeah, I'll go. So it was a promotional tour by RCA, which is, in those days, record companies have money. And if you're a new artist, your band, they were actually subsidized and pay for the very first promotional tour. They get you out. So we went to New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia. The very first gig. So this is how stuff starts happening. And like I said, when I was a kid in Cuba, I had a radio and all I listened to was American music. And I remember getting to the sound check and I have my two congas, I'm carrying my congas, and I'm walking backstage and I hear money, 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 money. It was like, what? The OJs. So, long story short, we did that, and we came back to LA, and then went back again on their tour. I got to meet and see all these amazing, the Temptations, the Spinners, the OJs, the Fifth Dimension, the Commodores. Oh, I'll tell you a story about the Commodores. All these amazing bands, man. Earth, Wind, and Fire. We played, we would open for them, or I was just around that whole circle there. I was at the Apollo, so we played the Apollo Theater. And the Apollo Theater, I don't know how it is now, but I just recently played that with James, actually, with James Taylor. They did a thing, but back in this is 1973 maybe, and it was like 5 bands,
Wow. Yeah.
and but each band played like 3 or 4 songs. It was not like, that's how that was. It was like a review. On Sundays there was 7 shows.
Wow.
Started like at 9 in the morning. It was like incredible. Like 5 or 7 shows, maybe 7 too many. 5 or 7. I think it was 7. Anyway, so the very first day of rehearsal of the shows that we're all sound checking at all other on time and all that. I'm standing outside. It was hot, New York, the heat, humidity. Excuse me. And this guy comes over and goes, "Hey man, excuse me, man. Are those your congos, man?" I go, "Well, they're not congos. They're congas, but yeah, they're mine." I said, "Hey man, listen. We just drove off from Alabama and we have a station wagon, so we just brought our guitars and a couple of amps, but we use congas, man, but we couldn't have any room. Could we use them since we're here at the same time?" And he had all these rings on. I go like, "Well, I mean, we're here, yeah, you can use them, but you gotta take those rings off, man, because you're gonna mark the skins, you know." She says, "Oh no, it's my other buddy, whatever his name was. The other guy, he plays the congas, he plays the trumpet, but he won't have any rings." "Thanks, man. My name is Lionel, man. What's yours, man?" It was Lionel Richie.
Lionel Richie. Oh man.
So those stories like that. So that's how I got started, and then so I did all of that, and then what happened with that band? What happened to me was that I was still a Cuban citizen and an American resident, but it was really hard for me to like travel out of the country still.
Right.
I couldn't get an American passport, and I had to get a thing called a re-entry permit on some crap. It was just a waste of time. And I got lazy. Like, no, I'm not gonna go down there and go on a re-entry permit and all that. So they went on to Europe, and then I never played with them again. So I stayed in LA. And when I'm in LA, what am I gonna do? I gotta find some other gigs. Well, guess what? I'm going back to my roots. I'm gonna play some Cuban band, So right at that time, by then I knew where the clubs were, and there weren't that many in those days. Virginia's was the famous club there, Candilejas. But Virginia's was the club, and I would go there. I met there Jose Perico Hernandez.
Wow.
I don't know if you ever heard of this guy. He's still alive. We talk all the time. Amazing player, because he was out of the school of the Afro-Cuban conga player school. It's different. And in New York, I would listen to some of the records, and the congas were tuned real low.
Yeah.
Kind of like the way the influence of Chapotín and Chocolate and those kind of bands from Cuba influenced these guys in New York. Like Mito Cardona. I remember watching Mito Cardona with Will Colon. His congos like,
And Tata Winnie also used to tune his congas low at the beginning. Tata Winnie used to. It was low.
Well, but not the main drum. Main drum was always singing.
Right.
And Perico played that style. And I loved him. I watched him. I learned a lot watching him. And with him, he tells me, "Hey man, there's this Panamanian singer that just got to town. He's starting a band. You ought to find out what it is. It's a guy named Azuquita, who became a famous singer, with Típica 73, and then moved to Paris, etc." So I found out what they're rehearsing. He putting a band together. I just show up, and the guy that's supposed to play congas didn't show up. Who later on became my best brother. His name was, a lot of people haven't heard about this guy, but I'm going to mention him. His name was Hector Andrade. His nickname was Bucky. He's the original conga player with Willie Colon.
Wow. Okay.
The very first Willie Colon record I don't know the name of the record, but it's a record that the cover has a picture of these guys playing pool. Hector is the first guy on the right side. He was the original conga. He's from that hood. He had left New York because he had a drug problem, and he came out here to clean up and stuff. We became best friends, but I didn't know him then. I just hear like, "Hey, where's that conguero? Where's that tumbalero? What happened? Everybody's here." So I go like, There were congas there. I go like, "Hey, I play congas." So I got the gig,
Nice.
and it was like became the best band, the happening band in LA. And on and on. And in the meantime, doing this, it's just networking, man. And then things just kept going.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that, I mean, I don't believe in coincidences. I think, everything is, I shouldn't say planned. I mean, there's no such thing as a coincidence. I mean, you show up and that's what happens. And the fact is, you show up, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
went for it. You were there, and then things happen. Things open up if you're there, right? If you
yeah,
show up,
that's it. You know, you just got to go
living
with the flow,
proof.
man.
I mean, of course you have to play, of course, but I
Oh, you
mean,
got, yeah, oh, no, well, yeah,
yeah,
that's like the point. That's the main thing.
yeah.
But you got to get there.
You have to show up, and some people don't show up, and they wonder, like nothing happens. Well, you have to go there. You have to show up there. That means take the plane, go there, drive, walk, bring your instruments, show up, just be there, or the
Yeah,
camps, or whatever it is, and it,
that's
it
right.
makes a difference. And
Yeah. And as you say, you also said a very important thing. You got to be able to play.
of course,
So you got to take care of your acts and what you're doing and study and you got to be top notch, man. Because I mean, you can get recommended to the biggest recording session in the world, or the biggest movie session or whatever, and the red light goes on. Okay, you got there. The red light goes on, and you don't know what you're doing.
you don't stay. Yeah,
Yeah, you're done. You're there that day. Yeah,
yeah. No, the pressure of, I mean, it's really important. And that's why people should study, should take it seriously, be around it. But then with that, I mean, you're always honing your craft. I mean, everybody from, uh, Vinny Colaiuta still practices every single day. He's got sticks in the back of his pocket. John Coltrane was playing and practicing all the time. So whoever we are, you have to continue to grow and to develop and to be there. But then you also have to show up and physically show up and be there and make the thing work. And yeah, it's
yeah.
one thing to get there, but then you also have to stay there.
And then on top of that, you also have to be a human being and be responsible and be a nice person. Because you try going on tour. If you go on tour and you're a jerk, you're not coming back.
Yeah, yeah,
So you got to be all of that. It's not just like, okay, hey, I play great, I'm bad. Okay, you got to also be responsible, see what's going on, work, and be a nice guy, be a human being,
yeah. No, you're
not a jerk.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Some people forget that. They say, I don't need it. I'm the best. And not really, because, as a human, we
Work
have to
out.
divide that. Being a good person is super important because you're on a
Yeah,
bus or a 3-month tour with people and just being nice to other people because everybody has their things that they got to deal with, but you're
yeah.
there to play music and to make it easy for all the other people you're working with. You just got to be part of the solution, never part of the problem, never.
That's it right there. Be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Very good, Aldo. Thank
No,
you.
I
Yeah,
learned that early on because I used to go to New York all the time. I mean, I just it was just my way, and I would see other people working and the way they were, and I just learned so much from watching everybody else as I grew up. And I said, that's the way you do it. And there's no point talking about and showing how great you are. No, no. When it's your turn, you just be part of the solution, make it great, and go. And everybody's happy, and they'll, and it's really important. And I tell my students, it's not how, what you do or what you say. It's important how you make people feel after that conversation or after the event or after the uh, recording session. Of course, it has to be great. That's obvious. But the least obvious is how do people feel?
yeah. Yes, sir.
We're not
Amen.
machines, right?
That's it right there.
And I mean, you've had some really interesting. uh, journeys throughout of this. Of course, one thing led to another, and of course, from Phil Collins to James Taylor. Of course, I mean, I've seen you with James Taylor, and I mean, no matter what the musical situation is, you're it, and you make it sound like it belongs, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't. I just play the music, and I was influenced since young, so being so young to listen to all kinds of music that it's easy for me. I mean, that's what that. I don't know. What I do is what I play is what I feel that thing needs, and it just happens. So
Nice. Yeah,
thank
yeah.
God that.
What are some of the funny stories that have come up in all the touring you've done with all these great people, including even Pat Metheny and Paul Anka? I thought you did something with Paul Anka. Did you not?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you this: the guys that when somebody would quit the band and leave the band, we called them. You escaped from Alcatraz.
Alcatraz.
Yeah, that gig was like, the one thing great about the gig, it was the very beginning of it. Michel Colombier put the band together.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yes,
Really?
man. Yes, sir.
Wow.
So Michel Colombier, you guys, whoever listening, look him up. Genius musician.
Yeah, pianist from
He passed
France. He
away.
was beautiful. He was incredible.
A record, Wings.
Oh,
Come on.
I have the records. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice.
I mean, so he put this band together. Paul, hired. Paul hires and fires. I'm not getting into this thing, but
Yeah,
he
yeah.
got Michel to put a band together, and I got called, and that's the one great experience about being around him for a few months. He was around the first, maybe I did the gig for about a year, and I quit. But he was around for like the first 3 months or so. He rehearsed with him, saw how he worked, and he heard things and how arranged things. Amazing, man, genius. And then he went on the road with us for about 3 or 4 months, and then about a year into it, I just had about enough. And it's like it's quite something, that Paul Anka fella.
I'll just slip this in. Paul Anka's Canadian. He's from Ottawa, where I grew
Mother-
up. So,
Okay.
and it was a
Yeah.
funny story because we were teenagers in school, and I didn't go to that same high school because this is later, of course. But a friend of mine told me he went to that high school and he sat in Paul Anka's desk, and the teacher almost chewed him out. You can't sit in that desk. That was Paul Anka's desk.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, cool.
Was Graham Lear in the band when you were there?
No. This is the very beginning.
Oh, the
This
very
is,
beginning. Okay.
Well, not the very beginning. He had another previous band. But I'll just tell you this. Michel Colombier flew us up to Vegas to see the show. He said, Mr. Anka wants us to go up and watch. It's the closing night of the whatever 5-week run at the whatever hotel he was. And he wants us to check out the show and all that. I said, okay, so we'll go up there. Little did we know that those guys are all that were playing there. That night, they were getting fired without them not even knowing it.
Wow.
So that we were the next band. It was just a very sleazy kind of a situation. So the original guys was 3 Mexican guys, the Toussaint brothers from the beautiful band Sac Bay. They were jazz Mexican, the most well-known Mexican jazz band that's happened, as I understand. Genius Eugenio Toussaint on the piano, drummer Fernando Toussaint on drums, Enrique Toussaint on bass. And then with Sac Bay, also they had a saxophone player, the great John Cross. So those guys, the guys from Sac Bay, got on the band and they told Michel about John Cross. John Cross came in. That's who was the original rhythm section, and myself.
Nice.
Oh, and there was another keyboard player, the original band had 3 keyboard players. So Eugenio, and then David Iwataki played synths, and Derek Nakamoto, another synth player. It was a great band. And Michel had produced the record. I forget what it was called. He had done this one record for Paul, et cetera, you know.
Nice. I had no
Yeah.
idea about Michel. I mean, he was brilliant, and some of the recordings, way back. I remember, just recently, actually, I still have the LP that was recorded in LA with a bunch of LA musicians, and it was amazing. Because I listen to a lot of records, LPs now, more than CDs. For some reason, it just sounds better for me. But
That's better. You mean Michel? You're talking about Michel, right?
Yeah.
He was genius, man. Genius.
Wow. Beautiful. Then some of the other like funny stories, or not, I shouldn't say funny stories, interesting things, like you've been playing a lot for the Grammys, and the Grammy House Band, and all of these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Any interesting backstory of how to, like, being in the band, in that kind of a band, high pressure, of course, but playing with some great musicians all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we just did that this weekend, and I've been doing it. I was thinking about it when I was doing the gigs, because right now the musical director is Cheche Alara, but before Cheche, there was another musical director named Larry Baptiste who did it for about 7 or 8 years. I was in that band with him. He called me, and before that, it was Patrice Russian with Ndugu on drums.
Yes.
The great late Ndugu Chancellor.
Yeah.
Man,
What a great guy and musician.
And, you know, rest in peace. And so I've done that thing for almost 20 years, man.
Wow.
You know, on and on, because there have been some years I've been out of town and I couldn't do it. But I mean, the way that works, you know, there's just every one of those bands that were put together by these musical directors are great. Top players in LA. We're good readers. You know, you can read very well, and there's a lot of music because there's a lot of bumpers and it's like, you know, you get a couple of rehearsals, but like there's so much music that you really play the piece once, and then you got to go to the next one. But it takes like 2 rehearsals to be able to do that. And there's usually 4 or 5, or sometimes less, because sometimes the act that's nominated is self-contained. They have their own thing. But then we get to play with, like, you know, Hugh Masekela I've got to play with, and, you know, all kinds of different people. I forget her name, from the Staple Singers. Oh, I forget her name. You know, people like that. Trombone Shorty. You know,
Right.
some great acts, man. You know, right. This year we played with Gaby Moreno and with Kirk Franklin. His thing was like amazing. Sheila E. Sheila E. came in and did
Yeah.
Sheila did the original, the opening ceremony, the opening of the thing, the opening number with the Pentatonics. You know, it's just like, it's been around like some really great talent. You know, Chick Corea, you know,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
a couple of years ago. It's just, I mean, there's not really anything funny. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. No, it's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's a dream that to be doing, to be making music, and of course making a living at it, and playing with such great people that just, you feel like you're on a whole other plane when you're playing music with these people, because it's an incredible communication, right?
Yeah, and they're amazing artists, man. You know, I forget his name. This blues guy, Buddy Guy.
Buddy
We
Guy,
did that a
right?
couple of years ago. You know, this is like, and I love the blues. You know, just being around these people and being like, meet them and you play with them. It's just amazing. Now, did you want to hear an interesting I just thought of an interesting funny story. It doesn't have to do with the Grammys, with Phil Collins.
Sure. Yes.
So Phil calls me up. Oh, first of all, do you know Ronnie Foster? This name?
I know the name. Yeah, I don't know him personally though.
Ronnie is a real dear friend of ours. He actually just released a record a couple of years ago, a new record. You guys should check it out. But really, Ronnie's kind of guy that he can do voices. So if he talks to you, Aldo, next time he can call somebody and sound like Aldo.
Really? Oh,
Oh, yeah, he likes doing that, you know.
okay.
Another guy like that is Tom Breckline. He just mimics. So he does my voice. Ronnie would do my voice like perfectly, but he would do other people's voice. So one day, I was in the back in my studio back there, and I think I was teaching a lesson or something. And Lupe comes in, my wife, goes like, "Hey, you got a phone call. It says it's Phil Collins." Really? Okay. I go there. Hey, Luis, it's me. Your wife hung up on me, and I had to call back because she thought it was Ronnie Foster. So anyway, so Phil calls and he said, "Hey man, I'm starting this big band. I want you to play in my record, and I want you to like, we're gonna go on tour." Blah, blah, blah. Phil always has. In those days, he had like a plan for the next 5 years, And I go, okay, so all right, so we go to the first thing I do is I go to Switzerland, and we're gonna have rehearsal for the Phil Collins big band. This is 90, I forget, 90 something, 96.
Yes.
And we're, it's going real well for one day, the second day. The third day in the morning, he goes, "Hey, did you get that cassette from Steve Jones?" I go like, "No, what cassette?" It was this, those 3 songs, there's 3 songs you got to play drums on. I went, "What?" I said, "Well, you play percussion, you can play the drums." I go, Phil, did you happen to ask me before I even came out here if I play drums, man? Because I play drums in a wedding once.
That's
I don't
funny.
use my feet, man. And he goes, "Well, get the tapes," and he's like a straight ahead. Just get the tapes. You'll be able to do it. Besides, what are we gonna do? Bring Chester over just to play 3 songs? You're left-handed and I'm left-handed, so you can do it. Okay. So I listened to. I had to listen. I had to learn how to play the songs on this in his left-handed setup. Whatever, perfect. So the first gig, so no pressure. It turned out okay. We rehearsed it. He said, "It sounds good." Okay, cool. I got better as I got along. Then we go on the tour, and the very first gig is at Royal Albert Hall. Yeah, with Princess Diana in the audience, and President Mandela in the audience.
Okay.
Conducting was Quincy Jones.
Oh.
And one of the songs I had to play was a duet with Tony Bennett and Phil.
No pressure.
We would play the show, and then Phil would go up the front and then sing these songs. And no pressure because it's being broadcasted live on the BBC.
No pressure.
That's my first gig on drums, man.
Wow. That's amazing. I knew you were a left-handed player, of course, but I didn't know that you played drums left-handed also. So that worked out.
Yeah, whatever. But I never really sit on the drums.
Wow.
Besides, almost everybody's right-handed, so
right.
But it was okay. It worked out all right. And actually, there's a record called Phil Collins Live in Paris or something like that, and this is for the big band. And there I am on a couple of songs.
Nice. Was it? I'm just you're making me think of something. Did I read this somewhere, or somebody told me, or am I imagining that Phil Collins once wanted to produce Buddy Rich's band, a record? Was that a project?
I don't know about that, but Phil told me that his favorite thing is Buddy Rich.
Okay.
And all he wanted to do was play in a band where he could be like the Buddy Rich of that band. He told me that, and he also told me, he says, "Look, people with a lot of dough and stuff like that, they'll buy a plane, they'll buy a big boat, big yacht. This is my boat, man. This is my plane. So this is what he always wanted to do. I don't know if he produced anybody
Yeah, I
recently.
don't
I
think
don't
it
know.
ended up doing it, but I knew, or I just remembered that somebody had mentioned that to me, so it just came in my memory. But it's really nice that you say that, and that Phil. I mean, Phil is. I mean, you know him well. I mean, I don't know him personally. I almost met him once when you invited me to a concert, and I was too late to meet him, and all of that, which is too bad. But he seems to be a very grounded person, and he's real. You know, it's really nice to work with people that are real and get it, and they're musicians and they understand the art of musicianship, of being a
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, being us percussionists and stuff like that. When you work, it's different to work and play behind Diana Ross than to play behind or Miley Cyrus or something than play behind Phil Collins. Phil Collins is a great singer, but he's a drummer, man. He's a musician. And he told me, he says, one time during this big band thing, we were like a sound check. Then he'd play. We were playing in Denmark, and he'd play, and then he'd go out there, and I would play the drums so he could hear. He wanted to hear what it sounded like in the house out there. It was in a park or something. And by then I was having fun. So
okay.
he comes back to his drums and he says to me, he's like, "You're having fun, huh? You're digging it, huh?" I was like, "Yeah, man." And then he said, "You know what he said to me?" He says, "I wish that's the only thing I had to do." He's a drummer.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Wow.
playing with him is like an amazing thing. Is that extra thing that is you play with all of other great artists, and that's all great. But when it's somebody like that, you know,
Yeah, where you totally understand everything, and he understands what everybody's doing all the time. It's like you're in that in the zone, and not just in the zone, right in the mindset, right in the mind
yeah,
of that. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. It's great.
that's that's
Yeah,
that's beautiful, and then it's so nice to see him, especially. I mean, he's got issues, and but he's been touring, and I mean, his son is playing drums now, but he's still out there, and he's still like in his mind, he's still that drummer, and you know, uh, I'm really, really happy to see somebody like that who still inspires because when those
yeah,
guys stop, it changes everything for us. You know, those
yeah.
of us who are listening and looking for inspiration and people who are still doing it. You know, like Ringo Starr and Mick Jagger and Paul McCartney and Phil Collins. We're still like out there because we're musicians. We want to play. We gotta play, right?
James Taylor, man. I
James
mean, he's
Taylor,
out. We're
perfect.
out every year. He doesn't stop. He does not stop. I'm going like, okay, next year he's not going to do anything. No, we went out this summer, and
Yeah.
I forget how he's 78, 79.
Wow, that's amazing. And he's another one of those.
He's a musician. He's
Yeah,
another musician. He
yeah.
he plays an amazing guitar player, and I mean he's played with jazz guys, man. I mean he's into it, man. He's like the shit.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, no, and it's amazing. I have a funny story with that. Once, you know, Lou Marini and I are good friends, longtime friends. And once the band was in town, and Lou came over to the house, and he had a day off, and one of my sons wouldn't go in the pool. So we finally, and this we always say this, you know, he went underwater only because Lou came in went into the pool. So I have to thank Lou for getting my son to finally dip his head under the water. But the funny thing is, we went to the hotel afterwards to drop him off, and I got into the conversation with this guy who was sitting there in front of the hotel. And, you know, we were just talking. And then it was only after that Lou introduced me that it was James Taylor because he's just so unassuming. We had this conversation just about all kinds of stuff. And then it's, I'm James and I'm Aldo. And he's so amazing, like just an ordinary person, but he's so brilliant as a musician. I said,
yeah,
wow, that was nice.
totally a normal, basic, nice person. I mean, I've been in the gym at the hotel, and he'll be like in the treadmill or next to me or whatever, and the next guy next to him doesn't know who he is, and they're striking a conversation or whatever, and like the guy has no idea. And you know, James finishes or the guy leaves, and I just laugh because like this guy never knew it was just, you know, he's just a regular cat. You know who's another beautiful guy I have to mention that I didn't mention I played with? Jackson Browne.
Oh yeah.
Jackson Browne is, I love him like a brother, man. He's another super wonderful, caring, you know, artist, musician. He plays guitar, great guitar player, and great songwriter. But that's another one of the highlights of my career. Jackson, Phil, you know, James, of course.
Yeah, no, it's really nice that that people are on that level. I just had this thought when I think the most recent time that James was in town. I don't know if you're on the gig. I couldn't be there. So Lou calls me and says, "What's a great restaurant? A good restaurant that we can go to?" So I made reservations. A friend of mine has a really great Italian restaurant that I really like to go to. So I made the reservations. And then when I went there the next time with my wife, he comes over, he says, "Well, thanks a lot for recommending those guys from out of town." I said, "You mean Steve Gadd and James Taylor and Lou Marini?" And the guy, he was looking at me, that was James Taylor? And that was Steve Gadd?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Totally unassuming. And yeah, I mean, it's nice to see that, you know, they don't need a whole entourage to go to the restaurant. I mean, it's also, for them, it's nice that they don't need to do that also. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, because there are some artists, you know, like I think they create their own like bubble thing where they can't do much. These guys, like Jackson goes anywhere. James goes anywhere, you know. Phil, you know, people will recognize him a little more. I mean, he was so huge, but
yeah.
They some other artists, you know, these guys are like just Superman. You know, Jackson Browne is the reason why I went back to Cuba. You know that?
No. Well, what was the context?
He was the catalyst, because I wasn't going to go back there, and he goes by then, you know, I always record. We're good friends and record with him, and I tour with him a little bit, and they were playing up in Santa Barbara, so I was, I'm going to go see Jackson. So I get there after sound check. He's walking down the hallway. He goes, "Hey man, we're going to Cuba." I went, "What?" And he looked at me and went like, as like, "Oh shit, excuse me, oh shoot, I forgot to tell Luis." And like one of those, you know, it's like, "Yeah, we're going, man." I said, "No kidding, where are you going?" You know, "Oh, we're going." "Listen, you want to go?" I says, "Oh, well, if you're going, I'll go." Well, long story short, you know, for me, I have to have a different visa and all this, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
And he didn't know this. He said, "Look, man, you guys are Americans. That's a different story. I got a whole other story." So
yeah, they don't know the backside.
I bet you I won't be able to get my visa in time for that. I sure didn't. So they go to Cuba and they come back. He's such a great and giving guy. He wanted to give the guys a vacation, and he loves Cuba and loves Carlos Varela. They're very good friends.
I played with Carlos Varela once. Yeah, we did a big show. Yeah,
they're very, very, very tight. So he took the whole band as a trip. He paid for the whole thing, and so they come back from Cuba, and he calls me, "Hey, I'm back, man. You know, it was great. We did this, we did that." He says, "Hey, I'm going to come down and see you." So I go down to see him, and while I'm there, my wife calls me and goes, "Hey, Louis, guess what?" I said, "What?" "You just got your visa in FedEx. The paper thing came." I said, "Oh man," I told Jackson, "Man, ain't that a trip, man? You go to Cuba, and now that you're back, I get the visa to go." And then he goes, "Well, you're gonna go?" I said, "Nah, I mean, I was gonna go with you on your trip, you know, but I'm not gonna go by myself." He said, "Listen, every time I see you, you talk about Cuba. You're not gonna go? Tell me in your schedule what day you can go, and I'm gonna go with you."
Nice.
So that's what happened. So if you go on, and the thing became, it's like him and I were gonna go. Then, of course, he has to have a road manager girl. This girl Norianne, she was hooking up all the things. I told him, "I'll go to Cuba, but I know you're gonna go to La Habana and everything. That's great, but I'm not going to go to Cuba unless we go to Santiago. I go, okay, so we go to La Habana, then we go to Santiago, and then we come back. I was like, fine. So I hooked it up with Lorianne, and then Jackson keeps calling me, hey, my friend Alan Konslowski, who passed away, but he's an Oscar-winning documentary filmmaker. He goes, he wants to go down and film the whole trip, man. Oh, okay. And then again, he calls back. He goes like, hey, the guys from Playing for Change, Playing for Change?
Yeah.
Mark Johnson, they want to go and they want to do a song with Cuban musicians. What's the song that all Cubans would recognize it all over the world? So, well, Guantanamera is one, So, okay, so if you go on Playing for Change and you put Guantanamera Playing for Change and you see that video, that's what we did on that trip.
Okay. Nice.
So Jackson is a big, big, big influence in me, man.
Nice. That's a great story, man. Yeah. Well, I still go and we, supporting all the guys, Piloto and Changuito and everybody there. I mean, they, building this bridge. For me, it was important to have this, to build this bridge so that we're on the same plane and we could be as helpful as we can,
Yeah. I mean, we all have different stories. You're not Cuban.
Of course.
When my grandfather was a tailor, and he had a tailor office place with like 3 other tailors. He made suits for everybody. He used to make suits for like the mayor, and he was a big, high class suit maker guy. And when the revolution came, let me just say first, when my grandfather, I never really talked to my grandfather that much because whenever I would go see him, he was always wearing pajamas, sitting on a rocking chair, and kind of out of it. And they would always go, hey, don't bother your grandpa. He's tired. Don't bother him. Well, the story goes is when the revolution came, they came in and told my grandfather, this is not your business anymore. If you want to stay, you can be the manager, but this belongs to the revolution and to the people. And my grandfather was so upset he got a stroke.
Ouch.
So we all have different stories.
No, of course, of course. But I come from, I was born in Calabria in this little village, and I was 9 when I left. So I kind of know, when people help you out, when people are around you, and so that I'm coming from a different, as a musician who can be helpful and build bridges to other people. It's a different story. But I totally understand yours. Trust me.
Yeah, and I went back and I loved it. I was great to share with a lot of my friends, and I brought CDs and I had, let me not, but people make sure I understand. The people are one thing, the government is another thing.
Of course.
So the people are people. So I love people, and I'm Christian, so I'm there to help them, just like you go. So I had been in contact just by the grace of God, man, that some kid reaches me on Yahoo, on one of my emails, and hey, my name is Sariel. I watch you with Maná, and I have all the video. Maná is a Mexican rock band that's like the Beatles of rock music, and I'm like the guy that does all the records, and I've done MTV Unplugged with them and stuff, and just I watch everything you play, man. Just want you to know I'm a fan of yours. Let me send you a picture of my setup. And his setup was like, my God, man, I got all these instruments here. And look at this. One little thing that, So the first time I went back, I had met Sadia. Hey, I wrote him back, hey, guess what, man? You're not going to believe this. I'm going to Cuba, man. Really? Okay. I met up with him. I brought him a bunch of stuff. I brought CDs, DVDs for guys to check out,
Yeah.
Sticks.
Yeah.
And I brought a whole bunch of Jackson and I went and we donated reading glasses. We went to the ophthalmology department of Cuba, whatever the government thing, and just brought 2 cases full of glasses because they don't got nothing.
The Fiesta del Tambor, there's a competition that they do, the Piloto runs over there. So every year there's a competition, a national competition for the kids for drum set, conga, timbales, bongo, and bata. And the winners would win the instruments. for the past
Huh.
20 years, of course, they don't have the instruments to give. So I've been bringing. That's been. I mean, this project has many missions and submissions. I've been bringing the instruments down to give to the contest winners every year.
Great.
You know,
That's great.
in the
So you bring
beginning,
in congas and timbal and all that stuff?
oh yeah, for the past 20 years.
That's great,
And
man.
then in the beginning, I started going broke, and then I said to the companies I endorsed, I said, you got to help me out and help them out, and we'll find a way for you to get recognition over there, and and your brand and all of that. So in the beginning, LP was helpful, and then Sabian was on board completely, and then with Gone Bops, and so now it's the channel. Every time we go, we bring all these instruments. We brought so many instruments to Cuba. It's not even funny. So that's we
That's beautiful, man. That's the thing to do.
and
Because
then
they are the people.
oh yeah, and then at one point last year, a friend of mine says, "Listen, during COVID, I mean, I wasn't working, but I lost my bass drum, and I haven't been able to work." So I had to find a 20, it had to be a 20-inch bass drum. And then just finding a bass drum that that wasn't just, something that wasn't really playable. He had a set of, I forget what drums he had. But so it took me a year to find this bass drum. And then we took it down last year to bring it. And I said, here's your bass drum.
Man, that's beautiful.
You got to do that.
That's the thing to do, man. Because music is music, and it's all about love. If you watch the Grammys this time, not mentioning years or nothing, but Harvey Mason Jr., who's the chairman now, he did I don't know if you saw it. He did a beautiful speech.
I was
We are the messengers of love. That's what we are, musicians. Yeah. And through music, and in that there was that string quartet. There was a Israeli guy and a Palestinian guy and an Arab guy. And we're playing music.
Yeah.
So all that other stuff goes to the wayside once you're around these guys. Listen, man, when I went there the first time, my last day in Cuba, the day before I was leaving, my whole full day, I became really tight with Carlos Varela, and from Synthesis, Carlos Alfonso.
Okay.
And the crew, X and M.
Yeah. I see them all the time. I played at La Fabrica last year. We did a big concert in the theater. Yeah, in their theater.
Yeah, they're just beautiful, beautiful people, and my buddies, my bros. And so Carlos says to me, this is the day before the last day I'm there. He says, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" I says, "I'm not doing anything. I'm just hanging out, man." No, that night, as we went to see Van Van, he goes, "Okay, well, tomorrow, I'm going to pick you up at 2 o'clock. And then, then Carlos is going to meet us and we're going to go somewhere." I said, "Okay, what are we doing?" He says, "No, don't worry about it. We're going to go check out some stuff." I go, "Okay." So they pick me up. Carlos picks me up in his little car, and we go to this one place where the Folclórico Nacional de Cuba is practicing.
Nice. Yeah.
And they were practicing dances. It's some big house from all the old days, from rich people and stuff. And when I walk in, the guy, I was in heaven, man. The director, this old man, comes over and goes like, "Hey, listen, this is your house. You're welcome here to do anything you like. You can dance, you can sing, you can play, you can take videos, you can take photos, you do whatever you want." So okay. So they were practicing a dance like on bata stuff, and then they play some arara. Excellent. And then it's now, I'm having a ball, and I'm there just grooving, man. And it's now like, I think 4 o'clock or something like that. And Carlos goes, "Hey, we got to go." He says, "Where are we going, man? I don't want to go." He goes, No, we got to go. What had happened during my visit, while I was in Cuba, I was getting messages from Luis, from Los Papines, all kinds of people, Chucho Valdez, all kinds of people, Changuito, Amadito Valdez, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. "Hey, when did you come to Cuba? When come to Cuba? We got to hang out. I got to see you. We're going to come over and eat, blah, blah, blah." And I didn't have time because I was, well, I'm going to Santiago, you know. So what had happened was when I arrived back to La Habana, and Carlos says, you know, take me to the Folklorico, and it's okay, we got to go. We go to this one place. It's like an old synagogue. Have you ever been there?
Yes.
Where they rehearse?
The
That
big
place.
one, yeah.
They take me to this place, and I see Pancho Amat outside. Hey, Pancho, how you doing? I said, what's Pancho doing here? I walk in. All those guys that had called me were there waiting for me, and we had a big, huge party.
Nice. Beautiful.
Everybody. And Varela told me, hey, you know what? This has never happened in Cuba like this. You united. Look at Changuito is talking to Amadito Valdez. They weren't even like talking to each other. And we just jammed. It was fantastic, man.
Beautiful.
So that's Cuba. Love.
Yeah. Oh, no. And when you talk, and also, I mean, music tends to do that in general. And percussion, of course, is like even more universal because it just transcends everything. And that's so nice to hear that, man. That's beautiful because as musicians, we can go anywhere and we can connect with people instantly. And especially people who know us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
The first time I went to Japan was 1978, which is totally different than now. You go to Japan now, and it's like there's a Starbucks in every corner. You know what I mean? Back then, barely there was. Listen, we went to do this one record with Chuck Rainey, and we were like recording like a few days, and like by the third or fourth day, all it was Japanese food, which is great, and I love. But Chuck Rainey goes, man, anywhere to get fried chicken? And it took forever to bring the fried chicken because they had to go. There was one Kentucky Fried Chicken in Tokyo. Now they got McDonald's, they had everything. So it's 1978, I'm there rehearsing for this record with other Japanese musicians, horn section, etc. And this guy comes over. He didn't speak a word of English or a word of Spanish, Japanese. We're still best friends. Junichi Yasaka, he's a percussionist in Japan, in Tokyo. And like, we just hit it off, like through music.
That's it.
With no language.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
It's an incredible gift. It really is. And you know, I'm thankful every day, and I'm sure you are. And I mean, not just to be able to do what you do, but we have this gift that is just amazing. And I mean, I'm surrounded all the time. These are like my friends. I feel like everywhere.
Your family.
Part of my family. This is part of me. This is my arm. This is my cousin. This is my other brother. Yeah. No. It feels like that, and I feel really weird when I don't have instruments around me. I was just thinking about me. I do feel weird when I don't have instruments around me. So I make sure I have instruments everywhere where I go.
It's like food, man. Music's like food.
Yeah. You're right. Well, listen, I mean, we could speak for weeks, and it took so long to get get you to sit down and be available because I know you're so busy. But we must do it again if you ever have the time. But I really want to thank you for taking the time and joining me on this talking about the journey and what you do and get to some stories and some thinking and what. You know what makes us, because we design our life, our future. That we decide what it is, and we, as you said, you know, we show up and be there and just be a good person, right?
Yeah, and it's not easy. I mean, it sounds like it's easy when we're talking. It's not easy, you know, and it wasn't easy for any of us. But there's a light down there at the end of the tunnel. You got to keep focused on that light. Yeah. Don't go sideways, up and down. You go straight up. Even if you're like getting bumped, you keep going.
Yep.
That's what it's all about.
Very well said, man. I thank you so much. And Luis, and as I always say, to be continued.
You got it.